Guys, I am here with a guy I met named Elijah. Elijah and I met at City Place. It's a mall here in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Elijah and I disagree on a lot of things in life, but we also agree on a lot of things in life. So when I met Elijah, we struck up a conversation, and one of the things he said caught my attention. He said, "I don't believe in anything that cannot be metaphysically proven through science processes."
I'm a nihilist. Metaphysically or petaphysically proven through the processes of science.
Yes. And I thought that was cool. And, I obviously believe as a Christian in the Bible, and Jesus rose from the dead, and he walked on water, and a lot of things that cannot be proven from science. So I wanted to make a video with Elijah, and he let me. I can't believe it, because Christmas is coming and families are getting together, and there's going to be people who sit around a table talking to each other who don't agree on things. They say, or that has been said before, that you can't have discussions about religion and politics.
Those are the two off-limit things, even in the restaurant. And that's all we talked about, I believe.
Yeah, we all talked about it. And I want to give you guys an opportunity, and I want to prove that wrong. I think you can have that conversation. And at the end of this video, I'm going to ask you guys, why can't you like someone that disagrees with you? And go ahead and feel free to comment and blog about it, and I'm sure there's going to be a great discussion. What is it that wars inside of us that makes us repel and judge each other, not want to hear each other's opinions, or dislike those that don't think like you do? So, Elijah, hello.
Hello.
And thank you for having me in your house.
I appreciate it.
I am actually humbled.
Yeah, welcome.
And honored to be here. And
I had a really good conversation with you. I thought it was nice to have somebody, kind of listen to what I had to say without, trying to force their own opinions and beliefs on me, or diminish mine, or negate them in any way.
So without talking about why people do that, I guess I would just like to start out by honoring you and asking you, what do you believe about God and the afterlife?
That, I don't know how much tape you have. That's a loaded question. I don't believe that. I believe that God was a person, like a lot of people who told you how to live your life.
Jesus. God was Jesus.
Jesus was a person. God is Jesus. Jesus is God.
Yeah.
Is all one person. It was an actual physical living being that lived, let's say, thousands of years ago. Obviously, for all these stories to have some correlation in multiple places among multiple times, there was, obviously, it was derived from something. So it wasn't if someone just sat down and wrote the book. I believe there was a guy, and I believe that guy saw a world divided, a world that could be brought together. But he was just a man. He was a smarter man than his time, as someone say Hitler is, or Mussolini, or Stalin, or any of those people have been. They've been great minds in their time, but what they've chosen to focus that energy on has been the negative. The outcome has been negative. This man chose to focus his energy on something and bringing a world together. He saw a world full of crime and full of death and full of just lost people, and he said, I can bring this world together. But they wouldn't listen to just a man. There have to be more than that. So at the risk of offending you, or you, I think that he was a man and he was a liar, but he was lying for an ultimate greater good. And that's why at a very young age, I got this tattoo on my arm. I don't know if you see it. Look, Jesus is smiling and winking and giving you a thumbs up.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. That's my buddy Christ.
What's the wink for?
The wink is because it's a reminder. It's a reminder there's a secret that he knew that nobody else knew. Like the Mona Lisa, they always say that now, in hindsight, it was him in drag. It was Da Vinci in drag. That's what the theory is there was never really a Mona Lisa. It was Da Vinci painting himself in drag. Well, the trick is that he knew something that everyone believes in but doesn't want to accept, is that the word God is really the word I. I forgive you. I love you. I want you to live a life. I want you not to murder. That is your subconscious not wanting those things. So I believe that Jesus was a man, but he was not divine. As far as heaven and hell, the second part of your question, I believe we make our own heaven and hell. The conscious part of our mind processes up to 11 things a second. But this unconscious, the subconscious, processes over 7 million. 7 million different things, including everything in the room, the air temperatures, the ambient noises, self-awarenesses, things like that. And I believe when your brain shuts down at that 1 second, where all last synapses from your brain fire responses, that 1 second is your heaven or hell, because those 11 million unconscious thoughts crossed over. And at that 1 second, you're aware of them. And if you knew they were your last 11 million unconscious thoughts, what would you think about? You'd probably think about your family. You'd probably think about the good things you have done if you're a good man. And if you're a bad man, you'd think about the bad. Think about the wrongs, the people you've hurt, and the things that you wish you could have changed and went different, and regrets, sorrows, fears. And so at that moment, that's your heaven and hell. You create it by being a good person or not being a good person. But God is an entity, a person. Story is the literal translation of the Bible. I could pray for $1 million right now. And if I hit the lottery tomorrow for $1 million, I still wouldn't believe in God. That's not proof. That's statistical numbers. That's mathematical algorithms. An entity, I could never believe in an entity. Science.
Whether it be the Muslim God, the Jewish God, or the Christian God?
No God, never. Never could believe in God. You never could believe in heaven, hell on a literal reality. Never could believe in karma. Never could believe in reincarnation.
So, you would consider yourself an atheist?
More of a nihilist, but yes.
What's a nihilist?
A nihilist has only things that you can believe in are things that can be proved through science, metaphysical, metaphysical level. I cannot believe in an entity of any way. I cannot believe in fear because it isn't rational. You make it in your head. Pain, you make it in your head. The only thing that I can believe in is that what I know to be right. And I think every person, no matter what their religious background is, what their creed, their color, where they're from, has a universal core moral compass that demands that they act a certain way. And God's laws, I love the Bible. I love a good book. The Bible is the best book I've ever read. But to me, it's a story. And how you interpret that story is what faction of faith or religion you choose to believe in. It doesn't change your core moral compass values, that you know killing is wrong, that you know hurting a child is wrong. And so if you're a Christian and I'm not, and you pray every day and I don't, but you beat your kids, we could never be friends. In fact, I couldn't even know you on a person. I couldn't even look you in the eye. I believe that if there is a hell, you should go there and burn for all eternity. But if you're a good man, I don't care, homeless on the street, if you're a good man who lives your life right, and truly in your heart of hearts, you know, and try to follow those core moral values, that me and you are brethren. We are what the Lord had in mind.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable. You know, that's a rare thing. I think it's very rare nowadays. Is most people who think a certain way, they just try to gather in corners with everyone else who thinks just like them, and they can
solidarity, my friend.
Talk about everybody else and why they don't think about things what they do. You know, I do believe in Jesus. You know, I believe that he actually came and died on the cross, and God sent his son to die for us. You know, the Muslims say, well, God would never have to do that. And I agree with them. I say, that's right. He did it because he loves us. And so you're right. He is all powerful, but he did it because I believe he shows one of the best leadership qualities in the history of mankind. Is a leader puts himself under the people he
bar none,
leads.
By far.
So yeah, God didn't have to do it, but he's reaching out. And the reason I think like that is because I kind of had my own little spiritual encounter with Jesus 14 years ago. And since then, I believe in heaven and hell, angels and demons, God and the devil. And I think that living a Christian life, it actually only works if you're in 100%. If you're half in and half out, you kind of doom yourself. You do the lukewarm thing. So when it comes to marriage and being heterosexual and monogamous, I just follow God on that one, and it works out really well for me and my family. And when it comes to the 10 Commandments, of course, but there's also like 611 other things that the Bible says to do that not a lot of people pay attention to, but I try to follow those too, and I try to pray every day. And so I think a lot of the times when someone like that says that, people who don't believe like me kind of draw back from being vulnerable because of a lot of things that religion has done in the past.
Yeah. And
they're afraid of history repeating itself.
You know what, mentioning that, it's so funny because I think that the biggest thing that causes this disruptance between two good men, you can meet a man on the street who lives his life in the same way you do, but I haven't admitted or taken in the faith or admitted that, and you have. Why is that separation between them? And I think that separation comes from animosities caused over different things that have been done by people who claim to be Christians or whatever, and they're judging the person. They're always judging the person instead of the religion or the entity in itself. You know, Christ, you know, putting him on my arm, living my life through a lot of his teachings, so to say, but kind of picking and choosing the ones I want, have given me the ability to kind of step back and say, this is what's right and this is what's wrong. You know, and no matter if you go to church every day and you're devout, it's those people I feel like that are pushing away the people who want to embrace Jesus or want to even try to talk to him or try to learn more. Sometimes they don't because they feel that judgment because those people aren't really representing what the entity in itself would want, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
You know? And I feel like there's a separation. When you tell someone you don't believe in God, one of their first responses is, well, he believes in you. Well, to me, that's saying that you disregarding what I'm saying. I'm saying that I don't believe in it, and you're telling me, oh, well, something I don't believe in believes in me. How about just saying, oh, I believe in you? If Christians, if any religion, if Christians were to honestly project what they're getting from it onto another person, instead of trying to convert them, as a lot of Christians do, I think that more people would step back, non-believers step back and go, wow, their life is truly enriched by something I can't understand. If they say, instead of Jesus loves you, say, I love you. And Jesus has given me the strength to say, I don't even know you, but I know that I can see the good in you. I can see some core values that I know are the same, that we are on a mutual plane of understanding on some level. Then I feel like we would be able to sit down, any people of any faith would be able to sit down and have a conversation and just realize that no matter who's right or wrong, we're both right and we're both wrong.
Yeah.
There's things in the Bible, I'm sure that even you yourself step back and go, hey, you know, whether it's misinterpretation or it's the time it was written or whether it was men who added things in when Jesus wasn't looking, you know. I mean, there's a whole chapter just on slavery, you know, but you have to step back and you have to go, you can't indulge yourself so much in the literal translation of the Bible as in what the core message is. And the core message is live a good life and make the hard choices. Be a good father. Go to work. Don't be a drain on society. And you do that. Whether you go to church every day or on Sundays and thank someone for the ability to do that, and I don't, we're the same. We're more the same than the guy you sit next to church with that prays every day and gives 20% of his money to tithing. Because you don't know what he's doing. You know, he might be getting 100% of that money by defrauding some good people, which me and you would never do. Me as a person who doesn't believe in God still would never do. It doesn't change who we are at our core. And that is what people are not focusing on, and that's what blows my mind. It's very scary. It's very scary that there's this wall between us because of an entity.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, it's obvious, you know, that you and I have a lot to say. It's kind of like a coincidence that we met. I would actually say that it's not a coincidence. It's God. Because no kidding. I'm trying to tell the story. I prayed for us to meet and have this video happen, and that was a hard one to answer because I didn't have your phone number, and you contacted me the next day. And then I didn't think you would say yes, but I asked you if you'd be willing to make a video, and you said, do I want to be on a website with a bunch of people I don't know? No. Do I want to be on a video? No. Do I want to take some time out of my day for my Christmas shopping and the duties as a dad? No. But for some reason, you think that making this video is actually going to do some good.
Yes.
And I respect that. You know, one thing that you do is you're a very good dad.
Thank you.
and you're trying to be the best you can be for your son and give him the best that he can, because of there's a lot of people that don't get that, and I really respect that. And if no one else ever told you, good job.
I appreciate that.
You know, I think that a lot of the problems in this world would actually go away if parents would be good parents.
I believe most of it, yes.
Yeah, you know, most of them. But you talk about those subconscious thoughts, and those things are kind of like directed through, you know, the parents.
Yeah.
And the kids have no idea what's going on.
Projected aggression.
Projected aggression. In the Old Testament, in the Old Hebrew language of the Bible, God's people spoke Hebrew. And in the Hebrew language, there is no such word as coincidence. So I don't think God's language has the word coincidence, because it's all directed by Him. I know you think it's crazy, but I don't think it's coincidence we met. And I look, he has a chess set here. Him and I are both avid chess players, so maybe we'll meet later and play a good game of chess. But I just enjoy sitting with you. So I want you guys to know that whenever you talk to someone and find out why they believe what they believe, you're going to find out that there's always a reason for someone who believes what they believe. Always. You know, when I grew up, I was raised in a Christian house, and I actually ran away from it and didn't want anything to do with the kind of stuff I saw happen in my church. It was just filled with evil people. And I thought, if that's what God is, I don't want anything to do with it. I kind of went the other way. And then I had an experience. You know, I came to a low, said a prayer, and found God. But you also had some things happen as a child that kind of make you believe the way you do. And how old are you now?
35.
Yeah, I'm just 36. So after that many years, you kind of start putting things together and formulating your own thoughts.
Exactly.
Being who you want to be. So, do you mind sharing, like, you know?
Yeah. So I grew up in the same religious household until I was about 5, and there was a lot of problems with like drugs and alcohol, and we lived in the city at the time. My mom actually worked at an exotic nightclub called Babes in New York for many years as an exotic dancer, and my dad was in the military. And there were just inconsistencies between the things you were taught from your parents about religion, different things, how you should live your life compared to what I was experiencing every day. So that initially, combined with a level of abuse that I prefer not to get into, that initially makes you take a step back and question those things a little bit more.
How old were you when you started being questioned?
When I started questioning, probably about 4 to 5 was my earliest memories of being told one thing and seeing another. And so you want to step back and you want to start to interpret and analyze the things that you're told compared to what you're witnessing. You know, such as, you know, don't be violent, or when you live in a household with violence, something along those terms. And so I think that hypocrisy, especially since I was shown it at a very young age, kind of like made me step back from the religion initially and kind of question it. But at that time I had kind of like a fear to step away, because everybody needs something. We all have a hole in our heart. We choose to fill that with some things, and most people choose to feel like God. That gives them someone to talk to, and, you know, someone to understand. And, you know, but at that young age, I was in a household where it was hard for me to connect with him on that level. So luckily, when I was at the age of 5, I was taken away and I was put in the foster care system with 4 other of my foster care brothers and sisters. We were placed in different places. So although I have, I think, about 5 siblings and half siblings, I haven't seen any of them in about 14 years. So coming out of a situation like that in an abusive house with religion being held over your head, I now kind of was put in a position where my slate was wiped clean and religion was just never mentioned. You know, it wasn't really mentioned. And so I had this curiosity to see what it really could be, or what it was about, you know, my intriguing nature through my teenage and adolescent years. And at that time I kind of, you know, I experienced it by going to church and talking to several people, and that's when I kind of stepped back from it a little bit more even, because at that point I realized that the it wasn't just my household that people were saying one thing and doing another, of conflicting ideas and beliefs. It was also in the church itself. You know, and of course the church is just the people in the church in the town I was from, but the people didn't really represent what I thought God could be. So I kind of thought, okay, step back again and learn more about it. Maybe there's something you're missing. So I kind of learned as much as I could about organized religion and God and different things. And then at that point I realized that I didn't agree with a lot of the teachings, but I couldn't negate or argue with the fact that this was the right way to live your life. This enriches lives, this makes families whole, this is the best way to do it of all the possible ways. But at that point I had already been so ostracized by the system and by my parents, the people who were supposed to trust, and that at that point I couldn't really even imagine accepting Jesus or, you know, any of those things. So a lot of years went by like that, I guess. A lot of years went by like that until like my early teens. And then in my early teens, I guess I kind of tried. And I think that's one of the biggest animosities with people when people who are very religious talk to people who aren't. And they say, well, you have to try, you have to open, you have to talk to God.
Kind of simplistic.
Yeah, I feel like some people have. In fact, almost everyone you probably come in contact with and said, can I pray for you, who actually got offended. Maybe that offended person has asked more times than anyone. I think maybe everyone does at some point in their life hit those depths where they sit in an empty room and they hold their head and they cry and they say, help me. And maybe at that point God didn't talk back, or maybe he did and they can't interpret it. Maybe they don't know what to look for. You know, I really can't say that.
You know, when it comes to praying, you know, sometimes prayers get answered quickly and sometimes they don't. But I believe all prayers get heard, of course. I mean, I gotta have an explanation, right? I think sometimes it's like your boat is off the dock, but you have the rope, and every prayer is like a pull. You're pulling that boat in, and you're landing that prayer on the dock. And so sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. You know, I gotta say, like, I've seen a lot of interesting prayers be answered that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, unless I was praying, or maybe they would have happened. But that's just how I look at it.
So it's because your interpretation of prayers not just be mathematical anomalies, and same as if I prayed to win the lottery, or I pray for $1 million today and I go play the lottery tomorrow, did I not make that happen by going and get the ticket?
No, I think that it's God's a personal God, and he speaks to each person individually, and when you pray, God answers your prayers, and it's a personal thing. And I don't think God lets other people see, like, the miracles done on his behalf. And he doesn't allow things to be miraculous and unexplainable except with him, because he's kind of personal like that. Now, sometimes people get healed. I've seen it. And that is a miraculous thing. And that's super fun and energizing.
I'm sorry, Charlie, how many kids do you have?
4.
Say that for the camera. 4. You should look tighter.
4 and no more.
Okay. Since I don't believe in God, let me tell you what a miracle is, okay? If I pray to win the lottery, or if I pray for $1 million tonight and I win the lottery tomorrow, that's not a miracle. It's a miracle.
That is pretty close.
No, I beat the odds. I beat the odds in a very big way.
All right.
For us to get up every day, having kids, to get up at 6:30 in the morning and make pancakes instead of Pop-Tarts, to drive them instead of put them on the bus, and then you get that one day off to take them fishing or metal detecting, instead of not to just lay in your bed and get stoned or drink or whatever it is people do and justify by saying this is what I need. For us to actually go and do that every day in and out, for the only reward to be, we know it to be the right thing to do, even though it wasn't the easiest thing to do, that's a miracle. And so if you're doing the miracle and I'm doing the miracle, then tell me a just God really cares if you're putting your head down and praying to him and I'm not. Because like I was talking to you before the video about Marcus Aurelius, the old Roman Empire, and Marcus Aurelius said, live a good life. And if there is a God and he is just, then he will welcome you into his kingdom because of your virtues. He will not care about how devout you are. If there's a God and he isn't just, then why praise or worship him? And if there's no God, then you will be gone. But the people you love will live on with the memory that you lived a noble life.
That's pretty good.
Thank you, sir.
Will just allow me to insert my view on miracles is that what you talk about being a good parent is really nothing more than the good inside of you be pouring out to being a good parent, good for other people. I think a miracle, that word should be reserved for something unexplainable that God does that nothing else does. For example, a paralytic regaining their limbs, control their limbs.
Can it be scientifically explained?
Yes and no. But sometimes when if that were to happen, it happened in the Bible. To each their own. Some would say miracle. Some would say
miracle science.
Scientifically explainable.
Yes.
And yeah, nerves regrow.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, about a centimeter a year or something like that? But you got the Bible, and you have the Great Commission, and Jesus sends out and says, "My disciples, they will raise the dead, they will speak in new tongues, and the lame will walk, and the blind will see." As a Christian, you kind of have to turn your back on science and believe that the God who made science, can overcome it. But
and as someone who only believes in science, you have to believe that if God is real, He gave humans the ability to study science and to understand why these miracles, which you people or you Christians or whatever interpret as a miracle, is really just something that was allowed through the metaphysical or petaphysical level of science. But did He not create that? Did He not create that? I'm not debating that. I will never say that I know that God isn't real, and I will never say that He is. I just say I don't believe in Him. But whether He's real or not, it doesn't matter if I believe in Him, because if I live my life in a good way, then I'm going where you're going. I hope heaven's real. For my sake, I hope heaven's real.
Yeah, the Bible says, Jesus says, before I come back, He says, "Behold, I make all things new." And God, He has like a forest fire goes through, has complete destruction, but yet new life comes up. We can
rebuild from the ashes, but first there have to be ashes.
That's good.
Yeah.
Animals die, but other animals come and eat that, and it gets cleaned up, and there's new life. The water gets evaporated and becomes pure and comes back down again pure. God says, "I make all things new," and through creation, He put in processes that happen. Our bodies are medically and biologically repairing themselves constantly. All of that, I think, is instituted by God, but isn't a miracle. The miracle happens when something unexplainable by science happens. So, my laceration is now healed because my body healed itself after a week. I would say a Christian who calls that a miracle hasn't ever seen like a real miracle happen.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my opinion. Because I think sometimes we try to believe on something so hard that we start just grabbing low-hanging fruit that we can say like, "Oh, that's God."
Grasp at the straws.
Yeah.
I think the thing with people who don't believe it and with the thing people who do is the whole faith thing. I listened to one of your other videos on your website, and the faith thing is very interesting to me because faith is believing in something, an ideal, without having proof. And believing in something without having proof, when you have proof of something like evolution or something, there's always going to be different opinions. There's going to be different stances. To not respect someone or not find your universal truths that you share in someone because of those different beliefs is just silly. To have people fight at the dinner table over things as silly as God. And when I say silly, I mean it's silly because whether He's real or not, and whether I'm right or you're not, if you're right, we're both going to heaven. And if I'm right, then in that moment when our brain shuts down in those last 7 million subconscious thoughts, because conscious ones, we'll create our own heaven. So all that really matters is, have we lived a great life at our core value? Do you know what's right and fight to follow it and be true to yourself? And if the answer is yes, and my answer is yes, and there is a heaven, we're going to party, man. It's going to be crazy.
Well, I'll just prompt you guys again. Below there's the comment section where you can comment on why is it hard for us to hear other people's opinions who disagree? And again, what makes it hard? What inside of you makes you have to not want to hear someone else's opinion about life? Elijah, this is your house, so I'm going to ask you respectfully if I could turn the discussion to politics.
Didn't you? I had no idea. Yes, let's talk politics.
Yeah. A lot of times, the religious right.
You realize I'm wearing a shirt that said, I don't think you see my shirt. It actually
Yeah,
says,
I love that shirt.
it actually says anti-socialist.
So that made me laugh.
Okay.
I love it.
Conversation
I
stimulator.
think I'm an anti-socialist too.
Yeah, there you
With
go.
my own faith of it. Hey, so yeah, a lot of people say the Republicans want to have the right and the Democrats are the left, and they're a bunch of like agnostic liberals who don't want God in our system. And one person asked me. I had another discussion with Roma at my gym. If you're watching, Roma.
Hey, Roma. At the gym.
She asked me one day, how come all the Republicans wanted to impeach Bill Clinton when he had his infidelity, but when Donald Trump has it, they don't care?
Because one's a Republican and one's a Democrat. You'll always stick up for the people you believe in. The same way at our core value, when we're in hard positions, what do people, I talk to my son all the time and I say, what is the most important thing in the world? And I think, is it respect? It's too dependent on other people. God's love? Sorry, but I personally don't believe. To me, it's necessity. People do what is most necessary to them, for them at any given point. And it's been like this since the beginning of the world, since the beginning of man. Necessity. It's necessary for them to support or respect people who share their same ideals, because it makes them feel more comfortable to analyze where they fit in inscrutable little social quirks, and then go home and try to reformat that into a positive box so they can sleep at night.
So what makes you root for a certain football team and dislike the other team?
Because I'm from that team, or I have some social or emotional connection to that team. So if my parents raised me saying Cowboys were the best, you could never tell me that Packers were anything. Well, that's another main problem with religion, is when people are raised that this is God, and it's drilled into them, they can't step outside and see that this is also good. It's not wrong. It's not what you believe in. The Packers don't suck. They're a great team. They might even be better than the Bulls or I don't do football, than the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But the Cowboys is your team. And everyone wants to fly their own flag. Everyone wants to root for their own team.
So I think that there's that subconscious thing inside of
Mhm.
us. You're talking about subconscious thoughts that make you want to root for one team or whatever, that actually leaders use to pit us against ourselves.
Definitely. The problem is the politicians, just like the church, they want us beating up the people on the other team. That's the problem.
Isn't it funny that we're actually all on the same team?
But the jerseys are a different color. That's the only thing. We're all playing the same game. The rules are the same. But because your jersey's red and mine's green, we have to be enemies?
Isn't that funny?
That's ridiculous.
Well,
I invited a devout Christian into my house.
when's the last time you did that?
I haven't been to a church in 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm honored. Well, we were in D.C. a few months ago, and we saw the Congress, and we let our kids walk around the Senate and the House, and here you have a group of people, some from the country who live out in the sticks, and some from like the deepest city urban areas, and they both have to come together and debate certain topics from way different perspectives. And I love how our country has the electoral map set up so no one has their voice that doesn't have to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the leaders, the same politicians in our country, I think, try to use that to pit us against ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my mind, when you look at policymakers, they use this thing in us. Well, I already said it, using each other against each other. But I think if Obama would have gotten Republican support on his Medicare bill, they wouldn't have been trying to crush it for the next 10 years after it leaves.
I think that if Obama had done the exact same thing that he did for his whole presidency, but he had been Republican, Republicans wouldn't have cared about anything he did.
Huh.
And I think the same thing about Trump. If Trump was a Democrat, nobody would care what he does. Because you're going to justify, you're going to change your own beliefs, almost morph them or warp them to go with the narrative. And the narrative is, that's your team. Okay? And if that's your team, if you root for the Packers and I don't, and the Packers guy gets indicted for hitting his wife, or whoever that guy, Adrian Peterson, is beating his wife,
That's bad.
I still got people that are wearing his jerseys in my restaurant all the time. And it's like he beat his wife. Yeah, but she was probably milding off, and that's my team. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, it's the same in everything in life. Like, people just can't step outside the box and realize that just because it's your team doesn't mean it's the right team, doesn't mean it's the wrong team.
So you have these different ideas where, let's say, you don't like Medicare or universal medicine paid for by the taxpayers, and someone else does, and then because they're supported by a certain party, and then they just come down on you and like, no, we can't have that, and this is why, when really they could be flipped themselves.
Yeah, it's all, again,
if a certain leader took it up.
Exactly. Again, it's all about necessity. The masses want to stay in the masses. The majority wants to stay the majority, and if you're in the minority, no matter where you are, unless you're in the majority, it's always going to be a problem. And so people are always going to do what's most necessary for them. And it goes back to religion. The Christians are always going to preach religion, and the people who don't believe in it are always going to preach anti-religion. But the problem is every team is trying to convince the other team that they're best. And that's why you have these like angry debates and these nasty words and these even hate crimes. And I think if God was real, the thing that would make him the most angry of all is all the crazy shit that's carried out, sorry for swearing, in his name. I mean, wars, bigotry, televangelism, everything that's carried out in his name, I think would anger that man. The dividing and the factioning of the religions, just like the dividing factions of the football teams. Don't we all play football? Like, aren't we all trying to raise our kids, go to work, and not beat our wives? So to speak. We're all just trying to make the right choices. But to ostracize this group over this group, and pushing someone who's already making the right choice away from you when you're making the right choice because they're not wearing the same color jersey as you, I feel like is crazy. If people would just come together, maybe the game would get a lot easier, so to speak, If you could predict the future, do you predict in the future that we're going to have a agreeable solution to abortion? Do you think that there's any middle ground that people can agree on? I think that there is. I really think there is.
I do too. For some reason, everyone goes to their corners, digs their foxholes, and just tries to bring everyone over their side.
When you talk about an issue like abortion, that's probably the hardest one to bring up, because you could say, you have a 16-year-old who's sleeping all over town, who doesn't care about anything or education, whatever, and has an abortion every month and just killing babies. Or you could say a woman who's married 50 years goes to the gas station and somebody pulls her behind the gas station and rapes her when she's got 7 grandkids or whatever, and now by some miracle she got pregnant. Do I believe that taking a life is ever right? That's something I don't even think I'm willing to answer. There's levels of it. There's levels of, like I just said, there can be yes and no on abortion, but can there be a compromise? Can we agree? I think we definitely can agree. But I think that first it has to be understood. It has to be understood the consequences and the outcomes of the decisions we're making, just like anything else.
I think people just got to talk about it. We're not willing to talk about it. It instantly becomes an inflamed argument, and people shy away for peer pressure reasons. Yeah, we use peer pressure as almost as more effective than our intellect.
Because we're sheep. People are ruled by sheeple. People are ruled by fears and inhibitions.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your opinions. Would you be mad at me if I voted for legislation that made abortions illegal?
No, that's your right and your opinion. Would you be mad at me if I voted for one that made it legal?
You know what? Honestly, I'd be mad at both of us. Because I think there should really be some people somewhere that can sit down in a room and figure out where the middle
That's where I was going, is it shouldn't matter what we vote for. What matters, why did we get to the point of voting just this or just this? Why can't we sit down and work it out? Because although in that situation there can be no right or wrong for every person, just like no politician or no sports team is ever going to be 100% or 100%.
Yeah.
But the fact that 2 people, 3 people, 1 million can't sit down on the couch of life and work it out, rather than hating other people that's not like them and then going and voting for it, and then 50% of the people, no matter what happens, 50% of the people are going to end up unhappy. That to me is the definition of insanity.
Yeah, well, the political purposes of dividing the people is made. So they get what they want to by dividing us.
We can divide and conquer. One of the oldest war strategies. No, we're talking about chess. It's one of the oldest battle strategies in the world. Divide and conquer. And the factioning of the religion, the factioning of sports teams, the political parties, they're all just more systems of control for that factioning. You can't have 20 million Christians who have a unified faith in doing the right thing and living a good life, all unified in the same room. No, there has to be disagreements about whether you can eat meat on a Friday. You know what? You eat meat on a Friday, I don't. We can't be friends. We're enemies within the social group. We're a social group within a social group within a social group, and still we can't be friends. You know, like, that's insane to me.
Well, I think if you walk into a cafeteria and you're looking for a seat, naturally you're going to look to sit down that are people that are like you. They look like you, they talk like you.
Look at the prison system.
Yeah, and it keeps people from fighting. And here we are saying we live in a great democracy, but at the same time, I don't know if we really know what that democracy is. To be the change I want to see. Thank you for doing this with me. I appreciate your opinions, and really I'm humbled just to be invited into your house and to be able to have a conversation about it. So again, why can't people disagree or like someone who has a different opinion than them? Let's have a little discussion about this. I'm excited to see where it goes. The question is, why does it upset us? So that's it. Did I leave anything out?
I don't know. I think it was a really good talk.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah.
Oh, one other question I wanted to ask you. If not for God, if you have the Big Bang Theory, the Big Bang happened out of nothing. Nothing was there and then it exploded. How does that happen?
I can't explain that.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that science one day may be able to explain that.
That's just as much faith as I have.
But you can't prove it. But you can say one day I might be able to prove it, right?
Well, it goes against the laws of thermodynamics where nothing can be created out of nothing.
It goes against the law of physics that a person can die and then come back to life.
Right.
You know what I've always wondered, and this you can cut to this, but I've always wondered this. You know, my wife used to have religious debates for hours on end. Because I was married to a devout Catholic girl, mind you, who was homeschooled, went to church every day, kept a virgin card in her wallet.
Opposites attract, huh?
Yeah, literally, like, and she was 22 years old when we got married. And we used to have all these religious debates. And no matter what I said about, well, how can this be, or how can this be? You know, I watch these debates with the science, you know, versus the religious people, and they're always trying to explain it through carbon dating and fossils and things like that. But to me, it's more like a state of mind. What happens if a guy is born on a desert island, and when he's 1 year old, his parents die, but he somehow survives alone on this island for his whole life, and then when he's 30, 40, he's attacked by a tiger or a storm comes, and he dies. Now, what I understand from the Bible is it's about intent. So you could say, even though he didn't have the opportunity, at some point he had the feeling of, what happens to that guy? If he never even knew God existed, if he never knew any option, if he just lived a life, but he never accepted God into his heart, he never even knew of God, he never even knew of a higher power, he never knew of anything besides that island and the fish he eat every day. Does he go to heaven or hell?
Well, let me explain this to you from the perspective of a Christian who believes in 100% of the Bible. Jonah got swallowed by the fish, an axe head floated to the top of the river, the sun stood still for a day, okay? Like a guy who, even if I don't understand it, I still throw in with the Bible. I still agree with God's ways because it goes back to my experience with Jesus. When God died on the cross, you say he died. When Jesus died on the cross, you say he died.
Dead.
I say he rose in 3 days. Okay, so you have this 3-day period. Where did he go?
He was dead. He went nowhere. He never came back to life.
So as a Christian,
Sorry.
I believe he went into hell and preached the gospel to everyone in hell. Because before Jesus, there was no forgiveness of sins spreading spreading of the blood of the Lamb to forgive the sins. So he went down to hell and he's like, hey, listen, everybody, I'm Jesus and I'm here to save you. He came back to the disciples and he told the disciples, don't touch me, I haven't gone to the Father yet. Because he had sin on him. He didn't want people to touch him. He had to go to the Father. He came back, appeared to people, to a bunch of people at the time. It's all in the book in the Gospels of all that stuff. So I believe those people before Jesus got a chance. I also have heard stories of people who have been to heaven and they've seen unborn children there. And those unborn children aren't babies or infants or fetuses. They're actually like 20, 21 years old people, or they look like it. They're full grown, but youthful. And people that weren't born yet, and they come back from heaven and they have these stories of meeting these people, and it shocks everyone. So I think when someone doesn't have the chance to confess Jesus with their mouth and believe in their heart that Jesus rose from the dead, I think they get the benefit of a doubt. But for Judas,
the benefit of the doubt. See, more Christians need to be like that. You talk about the literary interpretation of the Bible, but at the same time, you say the benefit of the doubt. Those two things don't go hand in hand. But you're right. That could be only be the answer. So is most Christians' problems not that they won't step back a little bit from the written word, which was, I remind you, written by man, whether it was misinterpreted or whatever. It was man's hand and pen that put it on the paper. And who can write and produce, especially back in those days, volumes like that? The most powerful people had the ability to produce even paper or parchment or stone or anything and control and regulate it. So how do we know it wasn't a big political system where those people added what they want to benefit themselves, like a whole book on slavery, for example, Ezekiel 15:12. If a man beats his slave so hard with a rod that the slave dies, then he shall be punished. But however, if the slave lives 2 or 3 days, he is not to be punished because the slave is his property. In the Bible, if you're talking about literary interpretation, you have babies being smashed against rocks, you have people being castrized, but at the same time, if you get in an accident and mutilate your genitals, you're not allowed to go to heaven anymore. You talk about heaven and hell and purgatory and sin and wrath, but then you also talk about a God that is just and forgiving and loving, but a God himself who says that you looked into my ark, so I killed 50,000 people for a look. Like, it's the book. It's a book. It's a great story. I love a great story. Like, it's a great book. I'm not going to not read a great book because I don't believe in it. I don't believe in Harry Potter. They have a whole world in Orlando for that,
Yeah.
Does Harry Potter not have his own language, his own interpretation, his own way, his own belief systems? I think the problem is Christians have taken it a little bit too far. And by taking it that far, they're using it to sanction themselves, not only from the rest of the world, but from other Christians and from people who come truly out of love and truly want to help. And that's why I asked you into my house, because you're the first person I felt like I've really met that listened to what I have to say instead of just thinking on how to rebuke it, And that meant a lot to me because, like I said, I don't know if you're right or wrong. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I believe that our actions and the fact that we've lived a noble life, if there is an afterlife, then no just God can justify keeping either one of us out of it. And that's what it comes down to for me. So how can we not be friends?
Well, I appreciate your question, but if we don't talk in a way that we hear, it's just like a fart in the wind.
Fart in the wind. Fart in the fan factory. Gone.
No, maybe.
In fact, let me ask you one of my favorite questions for religious people is, do you believe in aliens?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Why do you believe in aliens?
I think that they are demons masquerading themselves as another being to fool people and fill them with fear. When you fear, you disobey a law of God, and you allow demons more access to your heart and your mind and your thoughts.
I definitely agree with that. I call that more like negative energies. Although I don't believe in an entity or something, I don't believe in heaven, hell, fate, karma, I definitely believe in aura, positive vibes. For example, I met you in the restaurant industry. You were one of my customers, and first when you asked me, hey, is there anything in your mind you want to pray for? That initially struck me like, wow, I took a step back, much like most of my childhood.
Did I say it like...
Not to be that forward, but it just kind of came, it just kind of came out of nowhere for a customer-server relationship. It just kind of came out of nowhere. It caught me off guard, And...
I try not to...
Yeah. No. But the thing about it is, I choose to step forward, and where most people would go, sure, pray for me, or oh no thanks, I'm busy, whatever. I'm one of the few that'll say, no thank you, I don't believe in God. Knowing that could offend you and you're my customer, who I don't want to offend, especially if you might come back or you might write a Yelp review or you might leave me a bad tip. But I'm true to myself, which is, I don't believe in God, and if you're going to tell me your beliefs, I'm going to tell you mine, because I truly believe in my heart of hearts that we can still respect each other. I believe that even though we're in the middle of the restaurant and there is a relationship in play there, that you're a customer and I'm an employee, I still believe that politics, religion, whatever, they can't really affect a negative relationship in people if people just come at them with respect and understanding. You tell me why you feel, or I'll tell you why I feel, and if I say I don't believe, or you say you don't believe me, that's fine. And we can still be friends, because my beliefs don't require you to believe.
Yeah.
And your beliefs don't require me to believe. Now, as part of the Christian faith, you would like it if I did, or it would make my life better if I did. You feel like I would have a better life if I did. So even if you ask me something, you're doing it truly, you're projecting it out of love or loyalty to your entity. If I do it, if I try to convince you that God's not real, what am I trying to do? I'm just trying to be snide if I convince you. It doesn't matter to me if you believe in God or not. In fact, I hope you do. I hope you do, because it'll make your life better. But the fact that most Christians try to project onto other people and say, you should believe, blah, 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 blah. Don't tell me that I should believe. Tell me why. Don't come at me with, I'm going to pray for you. Come at me with, I found God a couple years ago. My life has been a lot better. And I'm a more loving, generous, kind person now. And instead of saying Jesus loves you, say, I love you. But what gave me the ability to love you is Jesus. That'll put a worm in my head. That'll put an itch in my head.
I think if you categorize everything, that's how Christians should act more. A lot of times people get saved and delivered of demons, and they have to really work things out. And we're not immediately like Christ, but we try to become through sanctification, which can take a long time or a short time, depending on how much you want to fight God.
I had a religious conversation with a priest for 6 hours once when I was in Biloxi, Mississippi. I went to Gulfport in Biloxi, Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina. My ex-wife, so volunteer time for the hurricane victims. We sat down, and I've had these talks with so many people, because it's funny. They see my name's Elijah, and then a lot of them will even see the tattoo on my arm, and they say, oh, you must be very religious. And when I say, no, I don't believe in God, they almost seem appalled. They kind of pull their head back, like a gasp, a gut.
Like body language.
Yeah, and I just feel at that moment, I feel isolated, I feel alienated. I feel like that's even more reason not to believe in God right there, because you're his disciple, you're representing him, and you are not representing him correctly.
Well, you said that Bible was written by man.
By man. Not
by God, by man. Jesus didn't write a letter. You look at the whole history of mankind, where a perfect God filters himself through imperfect people. Mm-hmm. The perfect through the imperfect. You see that...
You're going to get a lot of inconsistencies.
You see that man messes up. Mm-hmm. Even if he is recounting a story, a historical story, this is what happened. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the book of Acts. You still mess up details because you don't remember it right. Just like if I asked you what you had for breakfast 3 Tuesdays ago. How are you going to remember? And some people can't. I think as Christian, you got to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We are the current day written documents of Jesus. When you go around, and I go up to people, and I have to be extremely bold, and I even have to be foolish in my own eyes. Mm-hmm. Can I pray for you?
It's like hitting on a woman the first time. I imagine you feel nervous and kind of fluttery. I mean, you're producing a radical idea, especially in today's times. It has become almost a radical idea.
But, Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven, the bold lay hold of the kingdom of heaven. And I want to lay hold of that kingdom, the peace, the joy, the abundant lifestyle that he can give me. Honestly, I notice a difference in the day between when I pray and when I don't pray. Just my energy level and my joy. It's just different.
People could say the same about yoga.
Yeah, that's endorphins.
Is it? Praying is endorphins, is it not? Finding your center, finding your... I think about another verse.
So anyways, I got it.
John 2:15. John 2:15 said, "For a man who loves the world, love of the Father is not in him. For all things of the world, pride of flesh, pride of character, they're not of the Father, they're of the world." So, can we not have both? Can we not appreciate the beauty in the world as it is and still live our lives in a good way without having to go to a building and praise Him?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look through all through the book of Acts, those believers were in prison. And they didn't get church on Sunday mornings and Bible study on Wednesday nights, but yet they were singing to God. When I was in the military and deployed, I didn't have church on Sundays and, buddies to text about my struggles. But, I felt closer to God than any other time in my life. Anyways, again, thank you, Elijah.
It was a pleasure. Hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Yeah. Well, if you have time, we'll
Yeah.
play a game of chess.